So we haven't had a recession since I was back in high school in year 11, so it's been 23 or 24 years now, and basically everything that's possibly could have gone right for the banks has. Interest rates have fallen dramatically over the years. Return on equities for the business is very high. The market positions have been entrenched by regulation. We've had massive credit growth for these businesses, and even though profit margins have halved for the banks over the last 10 years, they've still managed to increase earnings and dividend per share simply because of that rapid growth in credit. And now we've got a situation where, as Glenn Stevens said recently, we just cannot expect the consumer to continue to borrow more and fuel the economy. So I think we're reaching some sort of endpoint for the banks, at least in terms, I think, of strong capital growth. Now, whether they can maintain dividends is really going to have a lot to do with how much capital they have to raise from here, if any, and also whether we get a big increase in bad debts at some point, whether that's from businesses going bust, or whether there's some problem with the housing market, or perhaps induced by a China downturn. Look, I think from the banks, if you're a genuine long-term owner of the banks, there's certainly nothing to panic about, but I just think you really have to lower your expectations. But at the same time, I also think you need to think about there is real potential for a proper downturn with these businesses. We've got an economy and a housing market that's absolutely geared to the eyeballs, and the reason we haven't worried about it too much is just because prices have continued to go up, and we've reduced interest rates, where we've got a record low official interest rate now. Now, essentially, everybody's done everything they possibly can to support bank profit margins and profits. The question becomes, if we did get a severe downturn, as I said, perhaps induced by China, what recourse do we have and how are the banks going to be affected? And I think while the government will always be there as a backstop for the big four in particular, it doesn't necessarily mean there wouldn't be a capital raising. But I think what you want to own is probably the best banks, and I always think Commonwealth and Westpac tend to be the better banks in Australia, simply because they make most of their money from their domestic franchises.